This is the Night Shift Podcast, powered by Black and Gold Banneret, your home for news and analysis from all UCF night schools. The Night Shift starts now.
Welcome in, everybody. This is Kyle Nash, the student of the game. No, I am not Kevin Sherry. He's on assignment somewhere in the middle of the ocean, enjoying a cruise vacation, which he definitely deserves, no question. But you have me at the helm once again, Kyle Nash, the student of the game, here with your favorite and very own Eric Lopez, the Sultan of Stickball. Your season approaches, sir, but we're not there yet. And I would talk about Basketball Media Day, but hey, looks like Hurricane Milton has imposed its will. It's weird to give something a name and then call it but that's where we are with hurricanes. Anyways, that'll be moved to later next week. My sources tell me, but nonetheless, here we are. Eric Lopez, listen, I understand that the swamp is in our rear view, but some takeaways from the Sunday presser with the coordinators and today with Coach Malzahn, it's very clear he is taking the blame for it and acknowledges that the time to start trying to improve as the season goes on is now. I don't think there's any question about that, right?
No doubt. Gainesville, that was a rough week game for them. And listen, first of all, let's make it clear, everybody, certainly thoughts and prayers for everybody involved that's going to be with this storm, this historic storm, and certainly on the West Coast and through all Central Florida. So let's get that, deal. We're going to try to distract you a little bit. You decide to listen to this episode on that. And you mentioned it. The only reason I bring that up is, you're trying to improve, and it's got to start now, but we don't know when now will be because, as of now, as the recording of this, they're scheduling to play the Cincinnati UCF game as on schedule at 3:30 Saturday on the Deuce. That would be the way to start it, but that who knows if that'll stick or not. And that's going to be interesting with the practice schedules and how they handle that. Yeah, with the storms and the scheduling, with all that, depending on the path and everything like that. So there'll be a lot of distractions this week and obviously of less importance, but that'll be an interesting thing for this team after the rough outing in Gainesville.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the practice schedule there, Eric. Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but with the impeding weather, things like that, Coach Malzahn shared with us that the schedule was that they did practice today, Monday, at the Nicholson Fieldhouse indoors. They're planning to do the same tomorrow, Tuesday, and then I think he said early Wednesday they're going to practice, and that's when things are kind of up in the air, and they're going to figure out what it is they're going to do. But at that point, once that practice is done, the players and coaches and staff and all that other stuff will certainly be hunkering down there to get into the appropriate places they need to stay safe, to ride the storm out. But the point you make too, with Cincinnati, obviously they're still able to practice while this is going, and assuming there is a game, I suppose the biggest inconvenience that the Bearcats would themselves experience would be they may have to make a decision on a hairpin turn and maybe fly in on a Friday for the game the next day, which is 3:30 in the afternoon at current. Of course, that may still move depending on what weather dictates what. I know that
the timeline is going to be interesting on all this because, when does the storm get here? Landfall in the West Coast of Florida, on the coastal line.
Right.
And then it's supposed to go up the Central Florida area. And then what's the damage afterwards?
Correct.
And that, as of now, we're recording this Monday night, so things could drastically change depending when you're listening to this. I mean, some of you might be listening to this as you're riding out the storm.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's going to be what does it look like? What's the power outage situation, which could be an issue? There's so many questions. And then, we'll get to this later when Bryson joins us with the Olympic sports, but, is the option there to move the game somewhere else like they did with one of the UCF sports in the Olympic sports?
Right. And Bryson will get into more detail about that.
Right.
Obviously, there have been updates that he and Donnie Docs himself, Don Struble, have put up on the Black and Gold Banneret social medias. So there is that for them taking care of that, keeping you guys up to dated. Yeah, you know what? I'm going with it to keep you up to dated to everything that's going on.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, hopefully, it's not too bad to the point where they could stay on schedule and play Saturday at 3:30. Now, the other thing they could do, and this has happened in previous storms in previous other states, they could play the game. They could move the time of the game later. They could move the game to Sunday, which has happened before. So I think the advantage that football will have is, it's scheduled for Saturday. Hopefully, the storm is out of the area by late Thursday. I think you and I were talking off the air about that. So if that stays on that schedule, then that is a chance. But again, what damages are done, all the
uncertainty is there. Yeah, there's all that to determine, and some of the scuttlebutt there in the press room before the press conference started was evaluating those things. There at this point, it doesn't look like UCF would be planning to, like, let's say, go to Cincinnati and play the game, because by the time they make a call, and they would know what was going on with the storm, UCF's ability to fly out may be compromised. So that's a whole other concept too. It doesn't look like UCF playing the game somewhere else with Cincinnati is something that's currently on the table, especially with as potent and powerful as this particular storm looks to be. For those of you that are the proper age demographic, think of this one closer to Hurricane Charlie passing over the state, except Milton may be a bit tougher based on some of the numbers there too. I know our meteorological historians may correct me on that, but yeah, that's the best.
It's historical on a lot of levels. But I mean, look, so either they'll play Cincinnati this weekend, or they're going to go to Iowa State in a couple of weeks. That's been announced as a night game, by the way. It ain't
Iowa 30 p.m. Correct.
Look, I mean, the things they got to work on. I thought the Florida game, Kyle, the tackling wasn't as sharp.
Right.
Missed a lot of missed tackles, especially in the first half on the defensive side. And I think the offensive, everybody's talked about. We talked about it on the post-game show, how slow the offense looked. Red zone issues, offensive line got beat by the Florida defensive line that had struggled all year. I mean, there's a lot of psyche, confidence stuff they got to work on here.
And based on hearing the scuttlebutt of what was going on, talking to Gus, and I know I bring that up, but Lee Hunter and Amari Kite were also present. As you listen to this, you could always go to the Black and Gold Banner YouTube channel and check out those particular press conferences for yourself. We'll hear what they said. But I'll say this: the main thing, based on what Gus Malzahn gave as an evaluation with their ability to pass the ball, they have receivers that are all pretty talented, averaging 10 yards a catch, and I think maybe a touchdown each per game. I could be wrong about that. But listen, they murdered Houston. What was it? They scored over 30 points and shut Houston out when they played them out. Not that Houston's a juggernaut, but still, they're not playing with their food like UCF appears to have been doing in some of their easier games. So there's that. I feel like what's really going to be the struggle here, Eric Lopez, and this is fresh off of Kevin Call also redshirting. We'll get to more red shirts and stuff and how feel about that a little bit later. But the pass rush and getting sacks and pressuring the quarterback is where I think that problem has been exposed. But I really think it's going to be like Janet Jackson halftime exposed here for this particular football game. It's going to be a real problem for the Knights to have to defend that.
Oh, it is a big problem. And part of it is, it puts a lot of burden on the secondary. It's hard to be a secondary player now.
Who's already injured, by the way.
Right. Now, I thought the second half they did some things there that were okay. Some of that was because Florida didn't have the possession as much. But they did get some stops in the second half. And so you hope you could build on that. But no, look, it's all fair. And they got to get back to what running that football. And the issue right now is teams have basically said, we're not going to let you run over us. You're going to have to make some throws, and they're going to have to make some throws. Like you said earlier with KJ Jefferson, they got to make some throws to open up that running game because teams are going to dare them to beat them on the air, especially with questioning how much, what the receiving core is. Kobe Hudson got shut down in Gainesville, held one catch, Kyle. Obviously, no Xavier Townsend.
Yeah.
No Xavier Townsend, who's no longer on the team, as we'll get to later.
Well, later, yeah.
Now, they tried Randy Pittman a few times there. I noticed Ryan lined him up. You have Whittemore, some other young guys, but they're all unproven receiving core and options there. You could make the argument their most explosive passing play was the wheel route to RJ Harvey, which has been their best play all year.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, and to Coach Malzahn's credit, I don't want to say I'm quoting him here because he kind of shut me down. But as the resident offensive lineman on the crew for this particular game, with these particular style offenses, the weather's probably still going to be sloppy if this game happens, okay? A sloppy weather scenario with a lot of rain, maybe a little bit of high wind, this works in UCF's favor. This could actually be the best defender on the field may in fact be Mother Nature.
We'll see what the weather looks like. Yeah, we'll see what the weather looks like game day.
Sure, but I'm just throwing it out there. If there's still bad weather, that helps UCF. That I just want.
Based on the forecast I've seen from some of the weather locals, I don't think the weather will be that bad once the storm passes. As far as Saturday, but
and that's what we'll have to see. But like I said, if there's still some bad weather, there's still some
for sure, right? Who knows? I mean, there's so many unknowns. This is such a weird week, and certainly reminds a lot of Knight fans. I mean, I remember. 2017. Remember 2017 where the Georgia Tech game got scrapped? And
what was it? Wasn't it both Georgia Tech and North Carolina that were canceled? I forget now.
I think it was back-to-back years. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And what was it? Maine was on the schedule, and it too got canceled, and it got replaced with all.
It's all blur, but yeah, I mean Georgia Tech was the most noticeable one. There was a lot of chatter about what to do with the game. So unfortunately for UCF, this is not new. And
I might be like you said, I might be mixing in some 2018 in there, but
it's all blurry. Trust me, it's all
hurricane interaction.
The good thing is, I give UCF credit. They've been out in front of this. They canceled classes real quick after Monday. Like they're closed the rest from Tuesday to Thursday. They haven't closed Friday as of this recording. They've been out in front of this.
Yes.
So they're going to make the right decision. I always believe, they're going to make the right decision as the week goes on, and I think they'll evaluate it, and we just hope for the best. Like I said, this team. You're right. This. If they do play this Cincinnati game, I mean, they're going to deal with adversity, adjustments, and where is this team's mindset? It's a fascinating question right now.
No, I can't agree more. And I'll put it this way: with all of that in mind, credit to the powers that be in UCF's athletic staff for doing what they can to get things right, the campus staff for making the correct calls, and in particular the communication staff letting us know so we can let you out there know what's going on with UCF and UCF athletics and all that. That's working good. And of course, like we said, we'll update you on that on the Olympic side later on here in the show, where Bryson Turner will break that part of it down. But let's jump to this, Eric Lopez, because I think you and I have been waiting for an opportunity proper to really kind of break this part down. But there were whisperings of it in the week leading up to the game at the Swamp, where, me and Donnie Docks were present. You can check all that out. blackandgoldbanneret.com for night class. And then also for the Night Shift Live, Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. But just before kickoff, I think the timestamp on my text is like 6-something p.m., 6:30-ish for a 7:30 kickoff. They officially announced a handful of players featuring basically Xavier Townsend, and then also that Colton Boomer was injured. Then over the weekend, it seemed like it may have even dropped today, Eric Lopez. I don't remember if it was today or Sunday that it was out there on Instagram or whatever. I saw it from several places. But Colton Boomer also officially redshirting with designs on transferring. First of all, what are your thoughts, buddy?
I wasn't surprised. He came out with a post, his post, which is what players do nowadays.
Yeah.
I think that was Sunday. It was Sunday.
It was Sunday? Okay, good.
It was Sunday. So I wasn't surprised. I heard rumblings about that. Sometimes, and I think you and I even discussed it about the off. He's had some injury stuff. He's gone through a lot of stuff here. Sometimes you just want a fresh start somewhere else. Not that anybody's pointing fingers at anybody. It just is what it is. This thing, And, the interesting thing to me was that they waited till Sunday for him to announce it. Because, right, on Saturday, when they announced all the other guys, they didn't include him. They just said he was injured. And, maybe, who knows what that was about. But,
right.
Look, it's not a surprise. This is the new landscape.
Quick note, Colton Boomer did not make the trip to the swamp even. Right. So I think that's a factor as well. But continue.
Yeah, so I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised. I think this is the new landscape of college athletics with these guys. And it's not just a UCF thing. This is going on a lot of different places.
Right.
Where I think you're going to have guys that are going to, bolt after 4 games, because they feel that they have a better interest going elsewhere. And I think, Kyle, the big thing that's going to happen here is you're seeing the exposure and being exposed, the redshirt 4-game rule. Right. Players are, so I think what you might see eventually, and there's been chatter about this already, even prior to all this, is the idea of just going 5 years, giving the student athletes 5 years. And that's it. No red shirts, just go 5 years. And then, that way, that's been something that's been pushed. I would not be surprised if that gets passed on.
Yeah.
As a result of this.
Well, I'll say this, because I think the element of the rule that's getting manipulated, just to be clear, is the 4-game, you can still redshirt concept. Okay. I think there's some there. I don't know that I agree with eliminating red shirts outright, because if you get robbed of a year because of injury, I think that's a bad thing. Right. And I think there needs to be some grace for players that do risk their body and do get hurt. And if they want to take the year off to get right and still remain with the program, I think they should get that opportunity. Right. Where I'm at, perhaps what needs to be removed is you could still redshirt and keep your eligibility, but you can't transfer when you do that. I think that
I don't see that passing. I think the toothpaste has been let go on that.
And then if that's so, but that's the thing. As the player, if I hear I just get 5 years flat, I don't like that either. So if I hear if my choices are 5 years or get that conditional redshirt concept that I said, I would rather have that, because again, I want that protection. This is football, Eric Lopez. People get hurt. This is what happens.
Yeah, but I think the reason is you can't have players leaving halfway through the quarter through the season.
Right.
I don't think either side wants that, both ways. There's probably, so I think the middle ground is, hey, you're going to get 5 years. You don't have to stay there for 5 years at one place. You can move place to place. And I think that's the idea from that is, hey, either if you don't play the first year, you still got 4 years. You got, you could play as many games as you want and still not hurt you. It's just unique because this only applies to football, really, because the other sports don't really have this structure of, hey, you play this amount of games and you can still redshirt. Usually in the other sports, if you play, unless you have an injury, that season counts.
Yeah. So they don't have that for sure. But I think there's an element as well to what's his word? Like there's an element, first of all, you hear less about the injury concept and all of those things happening in other sports simply because, straight up, Eric Lopez, they're not as risky, except for maybe hockey, which we don't know much about.
Yeah, by the way, I think if a player gets hurt and takes a medical year, that might not be included in the 5 years. You might get 6 years. Again, they're still sorting all that out.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. When I hear 5 years straight up, I'm concerned about that. And to your point, maybe that is part of the compromise they're offering, that like medical red shirts don't count. But then, what do you need? What needs to happen to then confirm a medical like, do you need a doctor's note? Like, what does that look like? It's a whole thing where other people could be trying to work the system. It's almost as if there's corruption in college football, Eric Lopez. That can't be. So, but
the other part of it, you wonder if the 5 years, is that part of a direction of unofficial, official, however you want to describe it, some sort of an agreement contract with student players that, hey, you're staying here. Because some people keep in mind, like if a player leaves during the season, that's not, you don't get that NIL money that, you may have gotten the rest of the year. That's gone. That's done. And obviously you lose your scholarship and afterwards and all that. But so I think there's a lot of questions still. And I think people are still evolving on this because it's all brand new. But I will say this. Certainly was not a fun week for UCF with all the guys that decided to opt out. I don't think you should lump them all in. I think they're all different cases.
Correct.
But this is going to happen in a lot of college places. I mean, you go around, you're going to see this in a lot of places. It's not ideal because now the issue from a UCF standpoint, like with Townsend, you're now even thinner at the wide receiver position.
Right.
So I would argue you're now even thinner in the secondary with some of the departures there with the young man from Cincinnati, the safe defensive back there, Threats.
Brian Threats, right. Which, I mean, how much he was committed is another question, but that depends entirely on who you ask.
Well, now if you want to open up a can of worms there, is this, we're seeing college sports kind of turn into pro sports. Kyle, you and I cover pro sports. What do we always hear about?
Quad Bullard just put it like that on Saturday after the game too, but 100%.
Right. So think about this. There's the draft in the NFL in pro sports, and then there's the free agency. And as you know, sometimes you hit on free agency and the team succeeds. Sometimes it flops and it might set you back. I think we're seeing similar things in college where, if you hit, it's going to pay off that year. But if not, it could set you back. And I think the poster boy, I would argue right now for that is Mike Norvell at Florida State. Think about the last 2 years, Kyle. He's been heavy portal. Yeah. Really not as focused on the high school recruiting. It worked out last year. He built a strong team, and they went undefeated, won the ACC, yada, yada. This year, all the moves have not worked out at all. And as a result, they're one of the worst teams in college football. It could be that quickly. That's an extreme. It's wild, but that's the risk and reward with the portal. And can you build chemistry? How do you build chemistry when you're bringing a bunch of guys from different places on a short notice? Can they develop that bond? There's something to be said with guys that come in from same recruiting class and go through the ups and downs for multiple years. And I'm not saying you don't want to do a Dabo Sweeney and ignore the portal. I'm not suggesting.
That's the polar opposite. You don't want to go that far because, listen, the only reason Clemson's relevant is because of how many ACC teams are apparently struggling this year.
So, right. So, the portal has worked for Miami with Cam Ward. So, you see the sides of both. And for UCF, they've had a bit of, I think, success and not success moves in the portal. Yeah. And that's the balancing act. And you're seeing that play out before our very eyes. So I just think it's tough. And this is not just in football. We've discussed this on the basketball court, and we'll certainly discuss this at some point. It's the same thing. College basketball, it's even bigger, the portal, because the rosters are so much smaller. So there's even more turnover on a roster versus football. As much as we blow up the football moves, it's usually 30 to 40, at most 30 to 40% of the roster, et cetera.
That's a high percentage if it's that much in football. Correct. Yeah.
Sure. Depending on, and it varies. It obviously varies.
Correct.
But basketball, you could have a complete new roster year to year, which is kind of, some people say it's hurt the product from a identification standpoint. As far
there's that, and then there's the one and dones, like the whole brand loyalty.
And we'll get to that when we get to college basketball season.
Correct.
So I think there's a lot here, and I think from a UCF standpoint, part of it in Gus' defense, because it sounds like I'm being critical of going into the portal. I understand why he did it. RJ Harvey decided to come back. You had a core there, and I was like, man,
By the way, you're still trying to elevate a G5 program into a power conference. That can't be overlooked, and it seems to have been.
Correct. Yeah. So you go after the veteran quarterback at KJ Jefferson, who had a ton of success in the SEC, through over 8,000 yards. Look, I'm as guilty. I thought this was a perfect fit. Maybe it still can be, but part of the problem, again, with when you have a player for just a year, you can't force it. Like, maybe he might, if he was here for 2 years, maybe he would be a lot better at the end of the year and going into next year. Unfortunately, this is a one and done year. And so it's instant. You need instant production, and, it hasn't been as consistent as everybody would like. So that's the challenges now that college coaches have to deal with in 2024.
Keep in mind, Eric Lopez, a one and done quarterback as a presumed starter has burned UCF in the past. The reason they got out of it is they happen to have an insurance policy and a young Hawaiian kid named Dylan Gabriel. Just throwing that out there. We all forgot about Brandon Wimbush already, didn't we? And rightly so. But 2 quick points I want to make before we move off of this and head over to the Olympic sports here, Eric. One, the term that's thrown a lot now is to avoid players that are clearly mercenaries. That term, of course, this is talk I had with the Orlando Sentinel's Matt Murschel, who not only covers UCF, but is their national college football writer as well there at the paper, has this perspective nationwide that this is, again, not a UCF unique problem. But something else I wanted to point out, too, I was listening to UCF's Mark Daniels on the radio today, and what he said is he's usually disclosed, I'm paraphrasing, he's usually disclosed more knowledge as he's an employee of the university, but he doesn't disclose it to the public, right? But what he did share was from what he knew about these players and their situations, even if they had won the game against the Gators and the Buffaloes, right? Even if UCF was still 5-0, chances are these players all probably would have still departed. That's the statement he made there.
I don't disagree with that. Again, everybody's in business decision for each player. Like each player may, hey, if you're not happy, it could be a lot of, and again, it's a lot of different things. It could be you're not happy with, right? If you're not playing a lot, that's an obvious reason, right? If you're not playing, you're not in the mix. If you haven't played much at this point in the year, then you're not going to play more than likely the rest of this year. And instead of maybe waiting for your turn next year, whatever, maybe you feel more comfortable like trying to go elsewhere and get a different start.
Or if you are getting significant time like Xavier Townsend and somebody starts waving a fatter check in your face, what are you supposed to do?
Well, the Townsend thing's interesting, right? Like, was he happy with his role? Because here's the thing. People are like, well, how could he not be happy with his role? He's just coming off a good game against Colorado. Listen, each player always feels they could be more involved, right? Like, especially receiving position. So it could be a combination of that. It could be, hey, I just and like you said, there could have been somebody that whispered in your ear, hey, you got to, if you bail, you now preserve that year, you'll get better opportunities elsewhere. A lot of, that does happen. There's a lot of tampering that goes on in college athletics. It's just part of it. So again, there's a lot of reasons for this stuff to happen.
Are you implying there's corruption in college football, Eric Lopez? I already made
corruption, but it's the wild, wild west. Some people don't like it.
Yeah, they need more guide rails. Yeah, if you use the term Wild Wild West, I know SJ is the head of the kingdom and all that. We'll push back and say that there's contracts and certain things in place, but there do need to be rules set up for certain things with tampering and things all that too. And I think that's kind of where we are right now. Also,
who's going to do that in college athletics? Who's doing that? There's no Roger Goodell. There's no Adam Silver. You know what I mean? Like that's correct.
That's the correct point. Well done, sir. You took that home nicely. I think we could close out the segment on that. So great job. Of course, we'll be going to the Olympic sports shortly here with Bryson Turner. But for now, this is Night Shift.
For all the latest news and analysis from every UCF sport, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for the UCF Knights on SB Nation. We bring you all the latest news and in-depth analysis from across Knight Nation, from football and hoops to golf and tennis. If you want to stay on top of all things UCF, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, powered by SB Nation.
You know, when I'm hearing that promo, I have to resist the urge to hit the bell, even when Jeff Sharon's doing it. Well, he's not actually. Of course, this is Kyle Nash, student of the game, back with you here on Night Shift with Eric Lopez and our own, the formidable Bryson Turner for the Olympic portion of the episode. Bryson, listen, with Milton bearing down, I'm sure you have your fair share of updates to bring us here about what things are changing this week here in UCF athletics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not exactly a very ideal time for a hurricane.
Not great, Bob. Yeah.
I mean, with so many UCF sports playing on the road last week, and now a bunch of them are coming home this week, and this is the week a hurricane decides to hit. I mean, geez. I mean, you have to feel for the logistics people at UCF athletics that have to deal with all of this stuff just after road trips. But yes, so we have 3 events as of right now because UCF is now. And now that it is 9:45 as we record this, UCF is officially closed now for the hurricane and it will be closed from Tuesday through Thursday. So this will affect 3 UCF events. Women's soccer versus Arizona. That is actually, since that it was first announced that it was canceled, it's announced that it will now be moved to a neutral site. And instead, UCF and Arizona will play each other on Thursday in Houston.
Oh, is that kind of to split the distance there? I like that. That's smart.
Oh, yes, absolutely. As far as travel goes, it's a good way to minimize travel for both teams. And I actually think it was supposed to be the space game, ironically enough. So that's kind of unfortunate that women's soccer is probably going to have to reschedule that. But yeah, Thursday, October 10th at 8 p.m. So if we still have internet going after the storm hits, then we'll certainly probably have something nice to watch on ESPN Plus if it ends up airing that.
There you go.
That will be that, and that we'll get to the stakes of that match after with women's soccer in a moment. As for volleyball, they had a match scheduled against Colorado. That was going to happen. That was initially slated to happen. For Alexia Kuhl was going to take on her former school, but it looks like that is now changing. As of this moment, it is not. As of this moment, I am not seeing when it's going to be at this juncture.
All we know right now is it's postponed.
It was initially going to be Wednesday. It was initially going to be for Wednesday, so the day of the hurricane. So yeah, you definitely need to change that. I'm looking at the volleyball schedule right now. Interestingly enough, they actually have on the schedule. I'm looking at the UCF volleyball schedule page here. I want to make sure I say this. This is not. I have not seen an announcement on this, but I'm looking at the volleyball schedule page, and I am seeing that they have a matchup with Colorado listed on Sunday, October 13th at noon.
Well, there you go.
So
maybe it's breaking news. We don't know.
So that could be, they might, yeah. I mean, I didn't know that if UCF and Colorado didn't have a match this weekend, I could see them pushing it further down the bucket.
Well, UCF does have a slate to have a matchup on Friday against Iowa State. So I mean, they're already going to be at home this weekend. So
here's a couple. So a couple things here. The women's soccer one was interesting. What we're seeing, the ramifications, and again, let me just emphasize. I'll emphasize this earlier in the show, and I'll emphasize this again. All of this is irrelevant compared to, obviously, with the storm and what that's going to do and where it's headed. So I think everybody agrees this is the proper decision as far as pushing, whether you're pushing it back or canceling altogether these events. That makes a ton of sense but you're seeing with realignment, the tricky thing is you got a situation in soccer with Arizona on the West Coast, UCF on the. It's not easy to just reschedule this stuff, right? So I'm sure in the soccer front, the only way they figure it out is, well, let's just play at a neutral site in Houston, which is odd. I mean, I would imagine UCF will fly out late Tuesday, maybe early Wednesday, and that's assuming everything goes.
Oh yeah, I'd assume they're leaving tomorrow night as we record this.
That's interesting too. I mean, eventually, hopefully, I'll get to talk to Coach Zahedek about that down the road. I'm curious how all that figured out and who took care of that. Volleyball, and again, that's all speculative. There's been no announcement on that. That could be completely just whatever. But if they decided to play here on a Sunday, that tells me that maybe Colorado and UCF this weekend, or if they did, they were able to. Yeah, we're speculating. There's nothing official as we recorded this Monday. Check your local listings, UCF.com for the details.
Or the Athletics website if you have signal, right? That's a thing too. So, anyways, Bryson Turner with the PSAs out. What do you got, sir? Go ahead.
Yes, we also have one more event that is affected. If you live near the Lake Nona area where the USTA National Campus resides, the UCF men's tennis team was slated to host the ITA Southeast Regionals. Day one of the tournament was slated to begin on during the storm, and so that is now been pushed. And so now basically the tournament will just start a day later. And of course, decision was made in accordance with the USTA National Campus, which is its own facility and And so now what's going on is the tournament is now being delayed by a couple of days. It's slated now to start on October 12th and will last until Wednesday, October 16th. And that date is actually a day later from when it was supposed to conclude. Initially, it was supposed to run from October 10th through October 15th. And it'll be a very key tournament because it'll actually serve as a qualifier for the NCAA individual championships, which have now moved to the fall. So very important that this tournament is played.
Right. No, great point, Bryson. Of course, just to clarify too, this we're recording here on Monday night. So you may want to check any updates that may have occurred, but this is us bringing you the latest information.
Right. I mean, this could change drastically in a few days. I mean, there's so many questions. Like, I know Friday men's soccer is scheduled to host a match against Marshall, which is a huge match. Men's soccer, but that may, and volleyball is scheduled to host Iowa State. But again, the issue there is the storm. Where is the storm? What if the storm drags it out a little bit? If it's still around on Thursday, remember Thursday is where probably Marshall and Iowa State would be scheduled to fly to Orlando. Well, if there's a hurricane here, you think those people are really excited to come down here? No, probably not. So,
right. I think that and a factor of how much damage is done will,
exactly. And that's, we may not know that, right? We may not know that till Thursday or Friday. And so, boy, those things are up in the air, I think, and they're doing the right thing. Right now, you don't have to cancel it tonight, but you still got time. You can see how it plays out, but just keep checking because I'm not sure. I don't know if those game matches will get played. I hope I'm right. If those matches are on schedule and played on Friday, that means things we're okay. And then at that point, I think from a football standpoint, that game should be good to go on Saturday. So I think, Kyle, from a football standpoint, if those Friday matches go on as scheduled, then that bodes well for football.
Yeah, absolutely. But even nonetheless, depending on what the weather looks like, you might find me in a black and gold banneret pullover rather than in my black and gold banneret tie. I'll put it that way. So anyways, with that, that should do it for the PSAs for the moment. Bryson Turner, let's go ahead and get into it. With whom should we start for our Olympic portion of the episode, sir?
Well, let's go ahead and start with women's soccer, because they have been going through it for a little bit. They did get a bit of a break as they hit the road to face West Virginia, where they were able to get Chloe Netzel back after she was absent from their previous matchup against Kansas State. And it was and I would argue that even though it was a 1-0 loss, West Virginia is ranked number 26 in the RPI. Of course, you hate to have another loss, but I think that this is a much better showing of for this team, especially considering what happened against Kansas. Like, ever since that, seems like this team got punched in the stomach against Kansas, they have shown out, and it's shown out. And while they're not perfect, they are at least showing like, hey, Kansas was an anomaly. We're not that bad a team. Yeah. Normally. Chloe Netzel came off the bench against the Mountaineers, shot the ball 4 times on goal, shot on goal 3 times. I mean, the impact that she has on this offense is absolutely astounding. She also actually didn't account for the majority of the shooters. UCF accounted for had 11 total shots. However, she did her 3 shots on goal were 3 of the 4 that they had the entire tournament, the entire game. The only other night that got me was Eddie Edem on there. Sammy Lipkin was once again in goal. She got 5 saves, only allowing 1 goal. And now that we've seen her through these next 2 matches, I think Sammy Lipkin has officially earned the starting goalkeeper spot over Genesis Perez Watson after, the Kansas game I think showcased, hey, maybe she needs to maybe take some time to get right.
Well, you've been talking her up since the beginning of the year. I mean, there's a short of you propping her up back at the beginning of the season on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. Or excuse me, the YouTube channel more specifically.
Oh, yes, absolutely. She certainly has the momentum on her the momentum on her side. And Jens Perez Watson has been training a lot in the offseason for Costa Rica. So maybe she maybe just overextended herself. It's very possible. The good news, though, is that the Tiffany Roberts-Haydock has that depth at goalkeeper to be able to have a goalkeeper like Sammy Lipkin, but she's a true freshman. She's not perfect. We talked about this when Wandy Munoz was a true freshman. Sometimes you have to just expect some true freshman things. But from what we've seen with Sammy Lipkin, she had to contend with 14 shots from West Virginia, 6 of which were on goal. Saving 5 out of 6 shots, especially when when 14 total shots at all, I would argue is a relatively good performance out of a goalkeeper. Just an unfortunate that
left hanging out there 100%. Yeah.
UCF's offense just couldn't support, which is unfortunate. But the good news is they at least have Chloe Netzel back in the game. That bodes really well as far as her going forward. And like we said, that is going to be going to Arizona, where they have to play in Houston. Fun fact, the last time they were in Houston was last year to play the Cougars. They, I believe, won that match 1-0. So it'll be very interesting. So it's not like they're going to a completely foreign environment, but they're going to have to face an Arizona team that is 31 in the RPI. So no West for the Riri right here. This is another top 35 team that they're going to have to go against here. And UCF, by the way, is ranked 125 in the RPI right now.
There we go. Let's go ahead and take it over to men's soccer. Bryson, what do you got?
So on the men's side, they also played West Virginia in the Big 12 men's soccer championship game, as they are the only Big 12 schools to have men's soccer.
Right.
And of course, West Virginia is the number 7 team in the country, so they are absolutely no laughing matter. They're ranked number 10 in the RPI, and UCF was able to actually equalize the match quite early on. West Virginia got a goal in the 6th minute. With UCF tied it up with an equalizer by Emmanuel Baum in the 21st minute, but West Virginia was able to get the game winner in the 49th minute. Was able to hold on to it the rest of the contest. No sign of Luca Dorado, unfortunately. He was not back for this one, so it looks like they were still erring on the cautious side with him on that front. As far as goalkeepers go, Shane Wright ended up totaling four saves off of 7 shots on goal by West Virginia. West Virginia and actually outshot UCF 11-7. So West Virginia a little bit of an advantage offensively there. But I think the story with men's soccer is just that they're still just reeling from getting hit with the injury bug at just the right pressure points, where it just has really kneecapped this team, where you lose Juan B. Munoz, you have to throw in redshirt freshman Shane Wright. And again, freshmen, you got to kind of take the good with the bad with them, and you kind of see it a bit with Shane Wright. And then, of course, no Luca Dorado, so that definitely impacts your offense. Anderson Rosa, by the way, considering he's a defender, he has really been stepping up in the offensive department. In the meantime, he actually led the team with 3 shots, 2 of which were on goal. For a defender, I mean, he's doing much more than I thought he'd be doing at this juncture. But
if you're Scott Calabrese and you got that much injury with that little depth, you need somebody to step up. In any sport, the players at the other positions have to chip in more, and I think that's what we're seeing there, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. So at least UCF did get a goal, which is a good sign. They did win Georgia State 2-1. That Georgia State matchup 2-1. This was a 2-1 loss. So, but unfortunately, it's not going to get any harder. Bearing, of course, damage from Hurricane Milton, they are now slated to face number 5 Marshall, who is ranked number 4 in the RPI. I still remember, Kyle and Eric, last year against Marshall when Zane Bubb nearly pulled out the play of the year by surprising the Marshall goalkeeper and seemingly tying the matchup in West Virginia, but it ended up being overturned because of a foul called on Zane Bubb. I thought that was one of the coolest plays, even if it didn't work.
I like what you were thinking, says Bryson.
It's like the hidden soccer player trick. Baseball has the hidden ball trick. This is the hidden soccer player trick. Okay. For those curious, UCF is ranked number 54 in the RPI at this juncture in time. So with this loss against West Virginia, UCF tied them last year. So you really want to try to put up a good performance against Marshall, especially since this one's at home. UCF hosted West Virginia last year. They tied them. So I think you got to see if you can try to flip the script, or at least repeat last year where you lost the road match between West Virginia and Marshall, and then either get a win or a tie in the home matchup between those two teams. And hey, if you beat Marshall, then that'll certainly help you and kind of maybe redeem yourself a little bit after losing against James Madison. It'll get you a statement win in this Sun Belt Conference that is a extremely tough league.
Yeah, well, we knew that going in that UCF would have to step up, coming in as I'm going to air quote, Big 12 school that doesn't have a soccer conference, you knew coming into this conference was going to be a challenge. I remember you talking about that even when it was still talk pre-July 2023. So no surprises here that this sort of thing is happening, but the adjustment has to be made, and Coach Kyle Breeze has had to do it with an injured group. That's a rough time. So what more can be said about that? So going from facing Marshall, I just wanted to say that really bad, Bryson. I'm sorry. But going from Marshall, volleyball left next on the docket. What do we have from that?
Yes. So volleyball, of course, is coming off of a not exactly a fun trip to Kansas State, in which they lost both their match. They got swept by both Kansas and Kansas State. This week they fared a little bit better. They hosted West Virginia, who is still at the bottom of the Big 12. They were like 159 in the previous RPI ranking, and they swept them. So that definitely was a great sign to see that they're at least, doing that. Emily Wilson led the way with 13 kills. Sasha Cohen, Cohen, by the way, great job with 10 kills. It's the second most on the team there. You did what they expected to do in that one, I think. Solid turnout there at the venue, 993 players listed on there. I unfortunately, if you remember last show, I was out with on the IL, I guess you could say. And so that ended up kind of factoring into this matchup right here. Yes. But solid, but at the very least, you get some momentum going after the Kansas State sweeps. But unfortunately, their next matchup took them up to Cincinnati to face the Bearcats, and they got swept. So Cincinnati ended, by the way, is ranked number 113 in the RPI. So they were right in UCF's neighborhood. And in terms of the RPI, UCF last week was 116 in the RPI. So to go on the road against somebody in your neighborhood and get swept, that is just unfortunate. Like they only really were. It seems like UCF has this pattern where they are just right there and just can't finish. This was the set scores in the matchup. Set 1, 25-23. Set 2, 25-21. Set 3, 25-20. Within 5 points all 3 times. I think that's going to be that bugaboo for this team, is they need a finish. They've had so many really close sets this year. They just couldn't pull it out. Even in Kansas, they had it. I would even say that a 3-1 loss would still look better than now having 3 sweeps in Big 12 play in their last four matchups.
So I mean, listen, at your age, you only know Paula Abdul as a judge on American Idol, but she has a song, two steps forward, 2 steps back, and that's what it looks like we were seeing here from UCF throughout the past week. They're still trying to replace McKenna Melville in the aggregate. I know we talk about it every time. I thought I would do my obligatory mention of it, sitting in for Jeff here in the host chair. Am I supposed to hit a button or a buzzer or something? Whatever. If Jeff's listening, he'll know I mentioned it here, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But as far as what's next, they do have Iowa State next on the docket, because initially they were initially going to host Colorado on Wednesday, but that has been moved because of the hurricane. So their next matchup is now going to be against Iowa State on Friday, barring any damage from the hurricane. We'll see what happens with the venue after the storm, but 7 p.m. Friday is what it's looking at right now. Iowa State, by the way, is number 65 in the RPI. UCF will come into this matchup ranked 118. So this will be an opportunity, I think, for UCF to use that home field advantage like Cincinnati did to maybe try to, claw their way up the RPI rankings, because as the conference schedule goes on, your opportunities are going to get slimmer and slimmer to try and, make a case for yourself to get to the NCAA tournament. Now, like I said before, no official announcement on this, but looking at the UCF volleyball schedule page, it says that they will play Colorado on Sunday at noon. So we'll see if that ends up being officially announced. But if that does come to pass, Colorado is ranked number 63 in the RPI, right in the same neighborhood as Iowa State. But what will be very interesting is we will have that revenge game factor because middle blocker Alexia Kuhl came to Orlando by way of Colorado. So that is, of course, would be a very interesting match. When I saw that the Hurricane Milton was coming and I saw that Colorado was on the schedule, I'm like, no, don't cancel this matchup. This is a perfect storyline of a matchup right here for Alexia Kuhl, who's been an amazing middle blocker, by the way, for UCF. UCF. The way she just bats the ball down with authority, whether it's with a kill or a spike. I mean, Jenny Maurer really hit in the transfer portal with this one. So I really wanted to see her go up against her former school. And hopefully, barring hurricane stuff, we will get to see that.
That's right. Bryson wants to see Alexis's revenge against her former team. And if he missed it, he would not be cool with it.
Oh, had to get the dad joke in there, Kyle.
I have the mic. You can't stop me, Bryson Turner. No, but now that you walked us through those three things, please tell us what you got on tap for Nightcap this week in case people need more distraction over and above the Night Shift episode here.
Absolutely. So UCF women's.
You can find that on the blackandgoldbanneret.com.
There you go. All right, so men's golf had a tournament that up in East Carolina. They're actually currently in action right now in Big 12 match play. That probably might not make this week because there's still a couple days left, and I definitely want to get this article up pretty soon. But if you want to follow the action on golfstat.com to kind of give you distraction from the hurricane, that's where it is. Women's golf.
PSA, Bryson Turner, continue.
Women's golf is currently in action right now, actually faring pretty well up in Champlain, Illinois at the moment. So you can follow that on scoreboard.com. That's kind of where the live, another live follow with college golf action. There's a link to it on UCFKnights.com, so you can find it there if you want to follow what the women's golf team is doing. And of course, barring damage to the USTA National Campus, the men's tennis team is slated to host the ITA Southeast Regionals, which have NCAA individual tournament playoff implications. So that is definitely going to be a fun time as well. And you'll see more information because UCF hosted the UCF Invite from October 4th to October 6th at the USTA National Campus, kind of get warmed up for that. So you will see that results from that in my nightcap, along with the results from UCF men's golf situation in East Carolina, and then UCF women's tennis, who played in the Bedford Cup that actually ended up getting cut short because of the hurricane, because that was being hosted in South Florida, but they ended up having to abandon play in order to make sure that everyone could kind of get hunkered down for the hurricane.
Yeah, they're right in the thick of it down there too. Bryson, thank you for everything Olympics. And of course, special thanks as well to Eric Lopez for chopping it up with me, Kyle Nash, student of the game here on this edition of Night Shift. Make sure you follow everything we're doing on Twitter. I don't say X because I have 2 kids. I don't need people hearing me say I'm on X. It might give people the wrong idea. But make sure you check us out there, UCF banner at _SBN. And of course, look out for work as well from our new guy, Don Struble. He was with me there in Gainesville for the Swamp. You will see him more soon involving basketball. And the reason why I mentioned basketball is over the next couple days, we'll also be dropping our conference schedule reactions to men's and women's hoops. We're finally going to get those dropped here. So make sure you look for those over the next week. That's right here. If as you're listening to this, when it first dropped on Tuesday, the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, we'll get you more delicious Night Shift content. So that'll be a good time for everybody else here. So for Eric Lopez and Bryson Turner, I am Kyle Nash, student of the game. And until next time, everyone, class dismissed. I don't have a bell, so I'm just going to give you fancy music.
Thanks, everybody.